Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Alone series, sponsored by Wolf Den Outdoors. We are watching and reviewing the Alone series from History Channel. I'm watching this live. I'm unfortunately not able to stream it live while I'm making the commentaries. If you want to watch this along with me, please go to either the History Channel's website, or you can watch seasons 1 through 2 for free, included with Amazon Prime. We're going to go ahead and get this started. So, just a quick recap. We had 2 people quit in the last episode. So I want to check here, make sure my headphones are on the right thing. Okay. So we had Joe lost his fire steel, Joe Robinet, and he had to quit. The other guy left, Wayne, because a bear charged him, and that was a legit reason to leave. We lost Josh to believing he was being stalked by a bear, and then Josh was the first one out. Chris then quit because the wolves that were nearby him. So it's an interesting thing to see. These guys quit and feel this way about things, and what takes them out. I mean, looking at this whole thing it's interesting to see. So far, we've had 3 guys quit because of the animals. The only one I really felt was justified, just in my own opinion, was Wayne. Because Wayne actually walked up on a bear that was pretty pissed at him and came close to his shelter. I wish Josh hadn't quit. I mean, he literally quit when that bear was right on top of him, but he yelled at it and the bear took off. He could have moved his camp the next day and he probably would have been fine, but he opted to leave and was the first guy out less than 24 hours. So, all right, so now we got through the brief recap, and we're going to be zooming in. Who are they going to first? So this is actually watching live. I don't remember these episodes. The past 3 episodes, I recorded them all, then had to go back and watch them and do it because the recordings got cut off for copyright. So we got Alan first. He's standing there like a statue. It's kind of weird. Tries to scare people. He just stands there. So I was wondering about this. I was actually thinking about this the other day. He's been using a stick to keep track of how many days he's been out. So he's cutting notches to keep track of how many days he's been out there. I was wondering if that helps or hurts. I mean, when you think about, I've been out here for 10 days, 15 days, I haven't seen my family in 21 days, that starts to weigh on you. I almost wonder if it's worth it not to keep track of time, Just kind of take that. In nature, there is no time other than sunrise, sunset, and you don't really keep track of a calendar, or at least hunter-gatherers didn't. So Brent's talking about just his mental game. It's funny. He goes, I don't want this tide to come in. I got news for you, Brent. Doesn't work. So he has to go back into the forest, and the forest's pretty dense, so that's pretty hard. But the nice part about that tide coming in is that brings in the food and the opportunities to get stuff on the beach once the tide moves back out. If I were him, I'd build some tidal pools, see if you could capture something going in and out. One of the things they had with Alan before we switched over to Brand is his knife was starting to rust a bit, and that's a problem. It's an interesting problem because in bushcraft there's a couple different theories about knives. Most people go high carbon steel, something like this, like a cold steel knife. It's high carbon, which means it holds an edge really well and it holds an edge really long, and it's a very hard knife and can take a lot of punishment. The problem is in a wet environment like where they are in the rainforest, it can rust pretty easily if you can't take care of it, can't keep some oil on it. So cool. Brant's been in the military, so served in Africa and stuff. That's pretty cool. His job's in Africa. That's pretty cool. So again, I was talking about the other option here with these knives is stainless steel. Stainless steel doesn't hold the blade as long, but because it's stainless, it usually doesn't rust. So that's something like this Buck 110. This is it's a high carbon stainless. So I think it's 440C stainless steel. So it's got a little bit higher carbon. It does hold an edge. Buck knives are fantastic. But the concern with Brant was one of the water he ends up drinking was like he didn't filter and boil it. He was drinking it filtered through some moss, which is not. He still goes, I could filtrate it without fire. But he's like, he filters it through moss, which great, it gets rid of the tannins and it makes the water clear, but I don't know that I don't know. They just said that there's a certain type of moss that contains iodine and people think it can purify water. That's just a risk I wouldn't take because, I mean, you get Giardia, your game's over. You got to call out and leave. That's just really rough. All right, so now let's go check out what Mitch is. Mitch moved recently. He moved all of his stuff across the water because he needed fresh water. Now it looks like he's moving again. He's hauling his camera gear. So this is all the camera equipment weighs about 45 pounds. That can be a lot to pull. I mean, you're talking, they're not pulling on pavement. They're pulling it over rocks and dirt. And your options are either pull it behind you or carry it on a rock or carry it in your arms. I don't know, if you're moving all your gear like this, I'd almost want to build one of the old Indian, I think it's called a wiki up. No, that's a shelter. Indian's a wiki up. Wiki up's a shelter. That's the wrong thing. It's where they have the two poles. The Indians have the that's what it is. It's a travois. I knew it was one of those words. So travois, I mean, you can do it with dogs or horses, but you can do it with a person too. It's basically two poles you drag along the ground. And when I'm watching him move, to me, I'm thinking, man, I would put everything there and I would pull it all back. So he's finally starting to fish. This is interesting how long it takes everybody to get where they're actually going after food. I mean, everybody's been taking so long to get fire and shelters set up, moving their shelters, finding out they need to go somewhere else for water, that it's taken almost a week for him to get to where he's trying to fish with this net. So he's looking for crabs or fish. I mean, netting fish is real hard to do, and catching them is hard to do in general, but I almost feel like Brent would have better luck where he's got the tide that comes all the way in. He could set up a net across his channel, and when the tide goes back out, he'd be able to catch stuff. I think a little bit more efficient than Mitch is trying to do it in the river, but I don't think it's good. So Dustin's got, it looks like a giant piece of kelp. I mean, that almost looks like a bullwhip. That's probably where bull kelp comes from, but I guess he says it's kind of like celery. I don't know much about sea vegetables, so that these guys actually know this stuff. I don't know if they got taught this or where they looked it up or how that works, but Oh, I like his knife. It's an interesting looking knife. It's got a relatively small blade, but then it's got a big curved out part. And I actually saw this. I was looking at custom knives today, and I saw somebody with that, and I'd like to know the advantages of that. So that's probably something I'll look up. So it's funny because this doesn't taste like anything except seawater. I mean, when you really think about this stuff they're eating, that's what celery is. Celery is mostly salt and water. If you juice celery, you're basically going to get salty water. So it's essentially the same thing as what he's eating. And so he's going through all this wash. I've noticed these guys are patrolling the beaches looking for things they can use. Before Joe quit, he had a couple bottles that he was using to store water. One looked like a liquor bottle, and one was a Coke bottle. One of the other guys found a buoy. It looks like Dustin's got quite a lot of firewood, a lot of driftwood coming in. And then he fell over the log. You got to be careful out here, man. Like, these careless mistakes, I feel like, are what's going to take people out. That's not watching where you're walking, trying to step on wet logs with rubber boots. I saw Joe do that, and Joe just about ate it in the river, and Dustin just fell. I mean, you hit your head, you could break an arm, dislocate a joint, rip a tendon. That's rough. I don't know. Dustin's talking about he needs to make fires, but it seems like maybe he hasn't made a fire yet. So he fell and he hit his arm really hard. He's like, oh, I was looking at something else instead of watching where he's going. I mean, you got to be careful here. There's a lot to that. I mean, well, he's at serious risk if he wasn't careful. What is it with these guys and these big-ass logs? He just goes, this is stupid, drops it. Yeah, I think so. You're like, oh, it's too heavy. Oh, yeah, that's a bad idea. We saw it wasn't Alan. Who was it? We saw one of the other guys do this where they were spending a heck of a lot of time trying to make a cabin. And that's, he tried to make a cabin and ended up giving up. And he spent all this time lifting and moving logs. Dustin's doing the same thing. He's lifting and pulling these big logs. And he goes, well, this is stupid, and drops it. And it's like, that was a lot of calories that went into that. That's just risky. This conversation between him and his wife they flash back to his house. My wife's got the same fears. What about bears, or what about this, or I'd be scared out there. She kind of has the same fears, and for me, I'm going, yeah, you just deal with it. So I like his attitude. He has that. He says the same thing I do. You don't think about the future. You don't think about, like he says, if you're running a marathon, you don't think about, I've got 26 miles to go. You'll never make it. You got to think about, I got to make it through 1 mile. I got to make it through 1 mile, and just like focus on what's in front of you. I got to take one more step. And it's very Zen-like, but it's also, I think, in these situations, what they need to do. So it looks like he's constructing a new shelter. He is using smaller wood, which I think is smart. I mean, smaller wood's going to be quicker and easier to get to, and you're going to get stuff up quicker. So now they're heading into the nighttime and came back over to Mitch. I can only imagine how dark that forest gets at night. So Mitch is boiling his water. My concern with these guys, if they don't get enough vitamin C, they can get scurvy and like start having other problems. So for him, it would be, I'd go for pine. So this is it. This is interesting. They're talking about fires and beating it up, and that their ferrocerium rods, or the ferro rod, which is this. You can see I've been striking mine. That he's using it so much because he can't get a fire. I mean, it's one of those problems that if you can't bank a fire or keep a fire going on time, it can be a real problem. I mean, when you look at what I look in, oh no, dude, what you do is, oh, he's going to make char cloth. That is genius. He's got his little tin for his fish hooks that he's going to make char cloth out of. That should help him with the fire. So that's good. But what I was trying to say is if you bank fires, or if you do, we talked about this last time, the old school fires where you've got a tripod holding logs and the two middle logs burn, and as they burn and turn to ash, they fall and the other logs fall down, and it just kind of is a self-feeding fire that can last you 15, 20 hours to keep a flame going. Zachary Fowler in season 3, I've watched some of his videos since, and he talked about how he banked fire, and he was able to he buried a couple logs, let it burn, so in the morning when he wake up he'd have fire, and he was able to keep his fire going for something like 40 odd days without having to strike his striker. I mean, you have it if you need it, but if you can keep fire going, this seems like it works. Oh, so he dried out the bark in the tin to make almost the same thing as char cloth. You stick it in the fire, which dries it all out and kind of carbonizes it, and it makes it easy. So one strike, he got a fire out of that. That's a good tip. That's a good little trick there. And that's one of those things that, man, if you're needing fire and everything's wet, if you can get one fire, he's now going to be able to make more and more fires, because every time he makes a fire, he just needs to make more of this stuff. Grab the cedar bark, shave it down, throw it in there, and he's got his fire for the next time. Brant didn't boil his water. He's got cramps. He's shivering. It's weird. Like, he's not, I don't know, maybe he can't get fire? Like, why would you not boil water? He's starting to see things and hallucinate. It's like, oh, I see like lights flashing. Like, I don't know what that is. It's called hallucinations. He's in trouble because he's drinking this water, and even his fresh water that he's trying to get to, because the tide comes in and hits that river that he's pulling his water out of, the tide comes in and brings a lot of salt water. So he could be drinking salt water. He could be drinking, I mean, when he's getting all this stuff coming out of this marsh, that's, oh, even if he's not ingesting seawater, he could be ingesting something that gives him salt, or gives him giardia. Like, there's a lot of stuff here that could be getting him. He's got stomach cramps. I think he drank seawater. Did you either drink seawater or you drink water that wasn't clean? Because again, he's just filtering it through moss. He wasn't boiling the water. He wasn't treating it in any way. It wasn't even leaving it out in the sun to see if the sun's UV rays could clean it up, which is, there's another way of doing that. I don't think it's as effective. Boiling is definitely the way to go, but he's in trouble now. I don't know. There's herbs and teas and stuff you can do to kind of try to deal with things. But I mean, the salt and seawater dehydrates you so quickly. What he really needs is, I mean, if he's in this situation, he needs to get a shit ton of water into it, but real water. But he'd have to boil all of it. He has to get it all in. That's not good. He's like, shakes without hypothermia is not good. No shit. That's your body. That's your body telling you you're in trouble. He's been drinking basically salt water and fresh water. He said he drank 10 quarts in a day. That's almost 2 gallons. And so his water's warm, so it's bacteria growth. He didn't boil it. He drank 10 quarts of it, which is freaking 2.5 gallons of water. No wonder he's hallucinating and struggling. I mean, if you've got a pond that's not really moving, he should have gone farther. The sphagnum moss isn't going to help him with the salt water. It's not going to. I don't think it's going to help him with the bacteria. It's funny. He's going upriver, and suddenly he goes, "Well, the water stinks. This area stinks." He's drinking downriver from all this decomposing stuff. Oh shit! There's dead fish in it. He's in some serious shit. If you do not know how to fix your food poisoning, he's poisoned. That's one of the risks of drinking out of a stream. That's why you need to boil water. He seems like he's almost got a bit of scurvy too, because his teeth are hurting. Usually when you get scurvy, your gums start bleeding and look at what he's doing. He should have scouted up that river. I mean, you could have a dead elk or a dead bear or something sitting up in those creeks. That's one of the risks. That's why you boil everything, because it'll kill you. Oh, it's Lucas. Lucas was the one who was trying to build a canoe. So Lucas just got a bunch of chanterelle mushrooms. They're really, really good. They're very, very delicious. So he's lucky that he found them. Mushroom identification can be tricky, but I mean, he got a bunch, so that's going to give him some good food, some good stock. Mushrooms are always kind of meaty. They're not the same as getting meat, but it's help. Alan's eating some more kelp again. The nice thing about the kelp is it's high in nutrition, so that's going to help him out. And I mean, while it might be low in calories, your body's going to be burning calories from the fat on your body. The problem that you have is your lack of nutrition. If you're in just straight starvation mode, low calories, and you're not getting nutrition into your body, that can be rough. So the fact that he's getting a wide variety of nutrients from the different foods is going to help him. That'll play out. I mean, he's still eating that stuff. He's getting out and getting the limpets. So Mitch has something going on. It's girl's birthday. That's part of doing what you got to do. Unfortunately, if you want to, it's funny because I don't know. To me, he's hurting that he's not out there. He's not with his daughter. She's 4. I don't remember my 4-year-old birthday party. I don't remember any of this stuff. I don't remember anything before I was probably 6 or 7, and even then, I don't really remember much. So it hurts not to be there, but I think him beating himself up about that is he's putting himself in a hard situation. That's going to be rough, and that's going to make him have a hard time. Again, like we've talked about in the last 3 episodes, this is all mental. I mean, there's some challenges. There's some physical stuff. Chris dropped a tree on himself. We just saw Dustin take a bite or a big trip over a log, which could have hurt him. But a lot of this comes down to these guys let the animals get in their heads. In this case, Mitch is worried about his family. That can take you out. I mean, when you're sitting out there for a long time, if you think about them over and over, you can create more pain than you need to be in. There's a lot of psychology in that. We create our own realities, we create our own mentalities. And looking at what he's doing, I mean, I understand how he feels, but if you're trying to go to win the $500,000, you got to take a very hard mentality where you don't think about it, you don't worry about it. It reminds me of the Navy SEALs. The Navy SEALs, if they're going to do what they call going down range, which is when they go and spend 6 months in Iraq or Afghanistan, things like that, especially the ones who go deep cover or high terrorist groups like SEAL Team 6, a lot of what they do is make sure everything's squared away so they're not out on the mission thinking about what's going on at home, because if they are, they're not focused and they can get killed. And this is the same thing. So, all right, they're back to Brent. He's hallucinating. I mean, the moment you're hallucinating things, you're in trouble. So he says he's hallucinating different things on his tent and kept changing. I'm like, that's definitely a problem. I don't know. It's weird that him being. Well, it's funny. He goes, I'm unsafe. You are. He did unsafe practices. He wasn't boiling his water. And that alone is enough to cause problems. I mean, you don't know. See, I don't think it's insanity. You're going to feel like you are, but the insanity is brought on by the water. So he's calling for emergency help, and I think they're gonna med pull him. They're not gonna let him stay when he's hallucinating and cramping, and because they're basically risking that he could die. And you've got to be careful and aware of what you're doing. That's for damn sure. Like, even if it's a hard time getting fire, I know you got to drink water, but I'd at least scout upriver and see if he can find other stuff that's better. Because, I mean, once he started walking up, then he noticed dead fish and the smells were horrible. Like, he should have known that before he drank from the water. I'd have taken that journey upriver for a bunch, but. So the boat and the rescue teams come out to meet him on the beach. So they're asking where he gets water from. If you look, he's literally drinking it straight from the marshes. And they're like, yeah, this isn't safe. So I've drank at least 10 quarts, like 2.5 gallons. I mean, you look at this, he's tapped out. You look where he was drinking water from, it wasn't fresh water. It was the sea and the oceans would go all the way up into the marshes, and then the water would flow back out with low tide. Like, that was not a good place to be staying in. So see, he's talking about his attitude, that his attitude was one of military survival, not being a bushcrafter or frontiersman. And I think that's really, if you're gonna win this competition, you have to be that frontiersman, mountain man attitude. If you're out there to see how long you can stay, how long you can just kind of suck it out, the woods are going to spit you out, because you got to do something about it. You got to be constantly doing stuff, constantly trying to make better shelters. For him, I didn't see him ever be able to make a fire. So that's, I mean, if you don't have fire, you don't have clean water. Joe knew that. Joe knew if he couldn't get a fire, he was in trouble because he needs to have water. Unfortunately, he lost his ferro rod, and that took him out. So now we're only 6 days in. We're down to 5 people, dropped by half within the first week. Mother Nature and Vancouver Island spitting these guys out left and right. I'm not saying I'd do any better. I honestly have no idea. So Sam's talking about getting food. That you got to go get this wood. You got to process it down because it's going to be wet on the outside. If you've got a log that's big, you're probably going to have some dry wood at the center. You just have to get it cranked out. So he's kind of stuck for a lot of the rain, but he's trying to keep that going. So it's interesting because these guys are like, well, I've heard bears and I've heard wolves, and there's cougars. You'll never hear a cougar. I guess he said right before they got there, some cougar attacked a guy. I mean, you just got to pay attention. It's funny because I think cougars are afraid of fire. Well, I know for a fact wolves are, cougars are, and then the bear's going to be too. They don't want to be near something that's going to hurt them. Their natural instinct is to get away from a fire because they've got fur that keeps them warm. So now it's dark and we're back with Dustin. He's hearing twigs snapping. I tell you what, that is the most unnerving sound because you don't know what it is. Is it a rabbit? Is it a squirrel? Is it a cougar? Is it a bear? Like, there's all kinds of things that can go bump in the night in the woods, and it's... Oh, Dustin's attitude is like, I'm not scared of bears or cougars. I hope it isn't a skunk. And I'm like, all right, there's... That's a good way to get some attention. So I don't blame him. I mean, you get sprayed by a skunk and you got that on you for days, and especially out in the wood, he'd have no hope of getting that smell off of him. I guess the bright side, if there's a skunk smell, then there's not going to be much bears or cougars in the area. So Mitch has his cedar stuff. He's still processing down. That seems to really help him. So Mitch left his net out there for a long time between high and low tide. I check it in between every cycle because if it comes back in, what's stuck in it could come back out. So you got a bunch of kelp stuck. That's not helpful. You got a huge fish in it. See, the one problem, though, is you don't know, was that out there for the last time of tide or was that from just now? So you heard something nice walking off. He's leaving the fish. Go grab the damn fish and get the hell out. There we go. Okay, good. He's coming back and picking up the whole net. That's good. I mean, the biggest thing you don't want to do, too, is you don't want the bear to come grab the net and take it off just because it smells like fish. But that's a good-sized salmon. That'll set him up for a little bit. I mean, you can do a lot with that. When he's boiling water, you can throw the fish heads and fins and get some collagen out of it, some extra fat. I'd almost boil the entire fish just because you're going to get tiny bits of marrow from the bones and some nutrition, some calcium. You can get a lot of different things out of that. Eat the fish liver, the heart, and if you're lucky, they got eggs. That caviar will work. So he's smart. He's bugging out. I was worried he was going to leave the fish there, but looks like he's bugging out. But he heard some squelch. I mean, it's hard to know, and this is his point again. You don't know what goes bump in the night. It could very well be a moose. It could be And because when you think about how many bears, cougars, and wolves exist on Vancouver Island, they've got food. You can't have 200 wolves, 7,000 bears, and around 1,000 cougars, I think, and not have big food sources for them. So deer, elk, things like that they can readily eat and be a part of. So you really don't know what's getting there, but looks like he's got his little kindling situation down. He does. He's able to get himself another ember off the charred stuff. Man, I tell you what, he got this thing figured out with that bark. That's going to save him a lot because, I mean, even a rod this size can take like 5,000 strikes, so it can take a lot. But when you're sitting there 10, 20, 30 strikes at a time, you can go through that pretty quick. So this salmon's going to give him like 5 pounds of meat. You really need maybe 2 per day. Like 2 pounds of fish can go for quite a long ways. So a fish like this is going to give him 2 days worth of meat if you're eating normally. So I'd smoke it. Which looks like that's kind of what he's doing, is he's going to try to cook it and smoke it. So he filleted it out and butterflied it out, which is good. He's got a little too close to it. He's gonna roast it. And the problem I have with that is I'd almost rather he almost cold smoked it or just smoked it from a real high temperature. Because one of the things he's going to get is he's going to lose the fat that's in the salmon. That's the oils and the fats are going to drip out onto the fire, and that's what he really wants, is the fat from the salmon. So it came back to Alan. Alan's talking about, just setting patterns. And I've noticed he's kind of taken this route that, he started setting time by the tides in and out. He started setting up his routines of what he does. I mean, if you settle into a routine can be good for you. A routine can also kill you. And this stuff, if it starts getting monotonous, you start getting bored and then you want to go home. But there's plenty of things you can do. His shelter's nice. He did a lean-to up against, looks like a bunch of rocks and all the logs and wood. That's pretty well insulated. He's got the tarp across the back and the front to keep him protected. That's a good shelter. I mean, he picked a good spot. Dustin's still in an A-frame, and I tell you what, for me, again, it's security. If you're in an A-frame shelter and you don't have something covering your back, who's covering your 6? Because if there is going to be a cougar attack, a cougar is more likely to attack you from the back. They're pretty silent, so you can be watching the front door all day and night, and the cougar gets you from behind. Especially with an open A-frame like that. That's so concerning for me that's what he's doing. I mean, I know that's a rudimentary shelter, and a lot of people do it, but in a country where you have that many predators, just be careful. So he's got this gorgeous salmon. I mean, that's a heck of a salmon cooking. The one problem he's got is it looks like he's cooking it in his camp. Bad news. I mean, you got to cook it because it's late, but that fish cooking is going to attract a whole lot of bears and a whole lot of predators for a couple miles. That's concerning to me. That's a problem. If you're in bear country, you're supposed to cook your food at least 100 feet from your shelter that you're in for this reason. I don't know if he's going to get a bear come in or not, but that's... And again, if you're cold smoking it, which means he's got it up above there so where he's getting just a little bit of heat on it, but for the most part, he's just smoking and preserving the meat, it's not going to smell so much. I mean, he's got 5 pounds of fish. That is good. It's great for him. And I mean, this is really good news to see somebody's actually got some food. The biggest thing is, again, with these 5 pans, he's dripping. So the thing just said that a cougar can smell 32 times stronger than a human, and he's dripping fish oil on himself. My real concern there is that fish oil he just dripped down, that's some calories. That's maybe 5-10. If you think about it, a single gram of fat has 9 calories in it. Protein and carbs have 4 grams apiece. So there's double the calories in fat. And so when you're out in the wild like this, you have to make sure you get fat. You got to get the fat off the fish head, all the little oils and meats in the cheeks. In this case with salmon, oh shit, he had a cougar come in. This is what I was talking about. Or I don't know if this was him. Is that Dustin or Mitch? So still day 6. Brant's gone, so they're down to 5. It is Mitch. Mitch brought in a cougar because he cooked his food right by his door. That's, I mean, when you're talking fish, that'll get Bear's attention too. And that's, yeah, he picked up the eyes as something came in to check him out because he's cooking it. I mean, it could be anything. It could be raccoons. I mean, I've seen this a lot. When I spend time out in the woods, you hit something with a flashlight, you don't know what it is. You just see eyes glowing, and it's so. So this thing is, I mean, again, yeah, he's cooking it right in front of there. I think he would have had less of a smell. He still probably would have brought it in, honestly. But if he had kept the fish higher up, where he wasn't cooking it and grilling it, because that's going to make a lot of smells. If he kept it up high and was smoking it and just preserving it, it would take longer, but he probably would have attracted a little less smell. So he buttoned up everything. The funny part is, when you see these other guys who quit because they had bears in their camps, he literally had what's probably a cougar 10, 12 feet away from his camp. And, I mean, that was almost right on top of him. What does he do? He buttons up the tent, goes to sleep. The game cam's picked up the cougar. Oh, that's a big cougar, too. You're to snap, and he wakes up, and yeah, that's a problem. Oh, next episode, somebody built a canoe. I was talking about this back when Mitch crossed his space, that I would have taken that route, because a canoe lets you get out, lets you get some fishing, because they come out there with the fish lines and stuff. If you can get out there with it, you can drop some lines into the water and see what you can catch. And so Mitch's little boat was a coracle. It was rounded. They're real hard to steer. They're not super stable. I mean, they're pretty stable, but they're not like steerable and navigable for really crossing water and feeling safe, especially the way he did it. It could have very easily got a hole, taken on water. So I'm curious to see about this canoe in the upcoming episodes. That wraps it up for episode 4 for Stalked. Obviously, Mitch is being stalked by the mountain lion. Brant got taken out, just not purifying his water. So we will see you all for episode 5. If you guys like this, you like my commentaries. If you don't like it, leave comments below. Let me know what you think. If you do like it, please click like and subscribe. Click the bell notifications, so we'll be releasing these. We're doing 1 episode a week. And then we're also going to be releasing a bunch of other content and things as we go. So we hope you all enjoyed this, and we will talk with you all next time.